Stand up for yourself, and I'll back you up. These problems don't solve themselves. I'll tell you what, instead of would or could, I think you should. Draw a line in the sand and stand your ground. It's for your own good.
Hello, my name is Roy Poyan, and I'm your host today for the Voice of Families and Addiction. And I'm joined today with my co-host, Rex the Renaissance Man. Sometimes we call him the cool Rex the Renaissance Man. Or maybe we should say Rex the Renaissance Man, the cool. What do you say?
I say we should, we could keep it simple,
Sure.
Rex the Renaissance Man.
We
but
sure
I
will.
appreciate the compliment. Thank you.
That's
you.
fine. I see it, I call it.
For sure.
Well, let's get started, Rex. We're looking at
Absolutely.
7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, an
Yes.
outstanding book that
Very,
guides us.
Very powerful.
Doesn't
for sure.
he really like strikes you at the core of,
Definitely.
gee, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Maybe I should.
Yeah, he allowed me to rethink things through to understand, okay, you know what, I was going down the right path, but these principles are helping me get more aligned with myself and how I look at people or just the world in general.
Right. I agree. And with that in mind, we're going to take a look with our audience on this second of the 7 habits, our mind considering both the beginning and the end.
Yes. It's like looking at, okay, it's like having a God-seeing eye, understanding, okay, this is what it's going to turn out to be, but how are we going to get there?
Right.
Like they say, you can't predict the future, but based on patterns of what you did in the past, you can determine where you're going. So, with beginning with the end in mind, it's just helping us envision, okay, what is success for us? Where do we want to be? But how are we going to get there?
I'm going to pull out an important word that you just mentioned because I like it, envision.
Yes.
So that means we can actually vision
Yes.
our success. And we're going to go through that. That's actually one of the points today
Definitely.
That we're going to take a moment in discussing. So join us in this open discussion. And of course, if you ever have questions, pick up the phone and call us. You'll find our information on the website, and we'd be happy to discuss any aspect that we're doing here today. We do want to we do want to caution or give some kind of claim that you're not to do this just by yourself. Once you've taken in Stephen Covey's words, and hopefully we've helped to guide you towards that, discuss it with others and discuss the practicality in your life as it relates to some of the things that are being written. And then make it your own.
Please
and that's a
do.
good way to do that. So let's turn to page 97 where we're talking about what does it mean to begin with the end in mind. And I was in Europe at one time in Poland, and we were doing a tour of the saints.
Okay.
And we ended up at a castle, got off the bus. I think I was a little foggy-headed from the travel because it's the minute we arrived, we went right to this castle outside of Warsaw. And we're in the catacombs of this castle where there's all these like marble caskets.
Yeah.
And it goes back.
Wait, marble caskets?
Yeah. It goes back centuries
Right, okay.
of these people's remains, and this is the Duke of so and so in 1432, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, and then one stands back and says, wow, these are representations of people's lives. I wonder what they would say if I were to open up the lid and say, so who are you, or who were you?
That'd be crazy.
Yeah, because he's at the end of it.
Right.
So he's able to look back and say, well, this is all of who I turned out to be. Although I didn't see that in the beginning.
Right.
It's kind of like, well, when it's over with is when we can write the summary.
Right.
But we're not there to write the summary.
Exactly.
But we can create that end thought of if we only knew what it would end like in the beginning, we could do a better job throughout it in determining what it was and how it was going to come to be.
Right. See, when it comes to us, we're alive right now, so we don't know when we're going to die.
Right.
And, in this book, he brought up about death.
Uh-huh.
Like, what are your peers, family, associates going to say about you when you die?
Yeah.
To be mindful of that because, of course, you want it to be a great what you would call it,
An epitaph,
yes,
like on your tombstone.
exactly,
Here's a great guy.
exactly.
Okay.
So you're basically just preparing for that moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So with that in mind, then Stephen Covey challenges us to consider the people that have often like achieved great victories in their life.
Yes.
And because they did that, I wonder how they felt about those victories. I mean, we want to think of ourselves in terms of here's my plan, and of course I'm going to succeed in it. But maybe a good plan is, what if you don't succeed in it? Do you have another plan? You know, that might, and then that starts to say, well, why am I doubting myself if I'm trying to create a plan for me to succeed? And
Before you can succeed, you have to fail,
you do.
because failure is a lesson that leads you to your blessing.
Yeah, I like that. A lesson that leads you to your blessing.
Yes.
I like that. That's very well stated. So the question then becomes on page 100, was this done by design or by fault?
Depends on who you ask, because if you ask the person that is living that life, it's designed to a certain extent. They're not the most high. So they're not really in control. But if you are, if you are in that next realm to talk to the most high, then yes, it's by design by God.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I personally seek God's will.
Yes.
And I'm not saying I'm perfect at it by any means, but I seek God's will in everything that I do. And I'm just hopeful that I haven't, deterred myself from understanding what that will might be
Right.
by worldly influences,
Right.
things that might.
Have you ever heard someone say, when you make a plan, God laughs at you?
Yes, I have heard that. I have to agree with it.
Literally.
I like the thought of God laughing.
Yes.
So too bad I'm thinking of it in terms of me, but that's okay. When I went into Boy Scouts was my first real opportunity to see what leaders look like, what leadership felt like, both receiving it and doing it. And in sports too, that gave me that chance to see. So what is a leader and what is kind of somebody that just manages something? And the question becomes, are we being leaders in our life, or are we just managing it? And then the thought is, well, what's the difference between a leader and a manager?
Right. And people don't even know the difference between the two. See, he said it well right here.
Yes. What was his statement?
So what he said, a manager is just someone who knows how to do things right, but a leader does the right thing.
Right, and that's true. And with that in mind, he also says, as an add-on to that, a leader has a vision,
Yes,
whereas a manager completes tasks.
definitely.
And so if you were to have, well, a leader can help you with a strategy, but what about the process that makes the strategy real? Well, that's something you manage. You manage the assets, the finances,
Right.
the people, timelines. But the leader is saying, this is what we want to do. We want to have a 33% market share in the corn chip business, blah. Okay, now how are we going to get there? Well, this is the strategy, and you need to manage the strategy.
Basically, just delegating that manager to take these steps within this particular chapter, so then we can get to the next.
Right.
The leader already knows the beginning and the end.
And he can more appropriately allocate assets that the corporation or the person in their life
Exactly.
has. I deal with a beautiful group called Citizen Circle out in Akron.
Okay.
And what we do is we sit around in a circle, and a newly released person from incarceration, like a day, will come into the middle of that circle. And everybody in the room has something to offer them. And we each take a turn saying, first they say who they are. Typically they don't have a plan. They don't have a vision. They're at the lowest level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They're transportation, food, safety, shelter. And so these people provide that. But what I'm providing is an actual plan with them to say, okay, we need to plan everything out.
Yes.
Because you're going to be better off if you could say to somebody that you're asking for what your plan is,
Yes.
and let them help you with their portion of that plan.
Right.
So with that in mind, leadership is the vision of how do you get somebody who's in panic mode or is in dire straits to consider the thought, oh, well, you need leadership. Aren't you thinking like a leader?
There's this method that I learned from one of my mentors, is using a mind map.
Okay.
A mind map, you start off with the center bubble
Right.
of what is the objective. Then you make small bubbles around it of, okay, these are the components. Okay, those bubbles have smaller bubbles with, below it, which are, okay, this is what's going to help us get here, and this is going to help us, basically get to the end goal.
Right.
So, mind maps are very, very useful, very effective. And I feel like anybody that doesn't know about it should learn about it.
Well, I imagine you can find that on YouTube and start to teach yourself.
Possibly. I haven't looked it up on YouTube, but I got it firsthand from my mentor.
Okay.
Definitely.
Very good. Yeah. Your mentor was your YouTube. So as we start to move further into the discussion of
Yes.
beginning with the end in mind, we find ourselves on 103, page 103, and he's already stated something that I think is important, and that is the visualization of a leader. And he's saying here, become your own first creator.
Yes.
And then you think, well, no, he's not. I mean, this is a person. I personally have an understanding of him. He's
You can't
a very
be your own
godly
God.
man.
Yeah,
he's not saying be God.
Right. When I saw that, I had to scratch my head. I'm like,
Okay, end of this
yeah.
book.
Yeah.
No, I understand. But with that in mind, becoming your first creator is you tend to think of something before you start to visualize it, before
Yes.
you start to do it.
Right.
So being cognizant, being aware that you've already created the thought.
Yes.
Now you just need to create the action and the
Yes.
plan. And that's really what he's saying. Use your imagination and allow your mind to, complement and fill in some of the blanks on what that might be. And then, so because we're talking about yourself and we're talking about, doing these things, the question then becomes, Rex, so who are you?
Well, for those that don't know who they are, you have to start off, okay, with the Most High, God. In the Bible, the first book of the Bible, it identifies as God being creative
Right.
because he's a creator. So if we are a reflection of what God is, then we need to operate in that same power. So it's like, okay, you don't have to overthink it. You have to just think about, okay, what is the first step? What do I have to start off with? You have to start off with a foundation.
Okay. So kind of a mission statement.
Yes.
Okay.
At least a foundation to know where do you want to start this off at. But of course, somebody else would say, well, you start off with the blueprint. You start off with the plan, because we don't plan to fail. We just fail to plan.
Oh, I like that too.
Yeah. So once we get that solid foundation, you don't want to build anything on sand. You want to build it on solid rock.
Right.
Then figure out, okay, how big do I want this structure to be? How do I envision this? Like, is it supposed to be vast, or is it supposed to be small?
Right.
What is it supposed to serve? How am I supposed to identify certain things about it? And then so on and so forth. So I just want to leave it right there. Is first, in order to find yourself, you have to acknowledge, like, okay, I am a creator. I was put here to create. I was put here, for a purpose. And it's not just for me. It's for me to use my abilities and my talents to serve other things that are around me.
I like that. I think that's a good approach. I think you could spawn off on a lot of those thoughts.
Yes.
And hopefully people will replay this several times, this podcast, so that they can get a deeper understanding of what you just said.
Definitely.
So, in terms of Stephen Covey's identifying a personal mission statement, it's very similar to what you had said. And it said, you succeed at home first. You seek to merit divine help.
Right.
I mean, that's the second statement. Never compromise with honesty. Remember the people involved. Hear both sides. Why don't you take it from there?
Obtain counsel of others. Defend those who are absent. Be sincere yet decisive. Develop one new proficiency a year. Plan tomorrow's work today. Hustle while you wait. Maintain a positive attitude. Keep a sense of humor. Be orderly in person and in work. Do not fear mistakes. Fear only the absence of creative, constructive, and corrective responses to those mistakes. Facilitate the success of subordinates. Listen twice as much as you speak.
That, of course, that's not your mission statement. That's his creed. And then, you're kind of like making a list of, so what are your principles? What is your, before you write your mission statement, the who are you is, what are your
Yeah,
values?
what
are
do
your
you stand
beliefs?
for?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We should all have one of those. I mean, if America would just stop and say, okay, we're going to take, a good like half a day,
Right.
and we're going to decide who are we and what is our mission? What are we trying to accomplish? And then we move forward. We'd find ourselves, I think, in a lot more less judgment.
Yeah.
The ability to collaborate, see other people's perspective. There'd be a lot of good payoff because we know ourselves first.
See, the problem with that is everybody has their own traditions, their own way of life. So if you tell everybody, what are your true intentions? What is your creed? What is your mission statement? It'll all be different.
Yes, it should be.
Yeah, but the thing is, to bring everyone together as one and do that is almost impossible.
Well, all things are possible with God.
Definitely, but it takes initiative. It takes
It would.
effort. Yeah,
It would. Yeah. Hands down. I'd have to agree with you.
but in a perfect world, I mean, it could
Fair
happen.
enough. Fair enough. And the world is not supposed to be perfect. And it's not supposed to be perfect on purpose. And I believe that it's not supposed to be perfect on purpose so that we do learn to rely on God, which means we do learn to rely on love
Yes,
of God. I love you because I can rely on you.
right.
I need to rely on you because this is an imperfect world.
Yes.
And although I love you, Rex, and,
Are you sure?
And you have God inside of you, and that's the part of you that I love. 'Cause
I
can
appreciate that.
recognize
See, I appreciate you for identifying why you said that you love me, because oftentimes people throw that out there
Yeah.
and don't even know whether it's an emotion or an
Right.
action.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be a misleading and sloppy word if
Very.
you don't, respect the word love.
Very.
So, in a sense, are we loving ourselves in this exercise?
I can speak for myself. Yes.
I would say the same true for me too. So now on page 109, he starts to talk about the center of kind of like self.
Yes.
And on page 110, he gives us 4 kind of like outward reaching ideas of ourself. So 'cause-
Security, wisdom, guidance, and power.
excellent. And if we take a closer look at each of those, they kind of influence, not kind of, they do, who our center is.
Yes.
So we are in seek of security. All of us are.
Yes.
We absolutely need guidance and we need power, but we need to have power for ourselves too.
Yes.
And somebody might say, well, that's not very humble of you. Are you saying power over others? No, that's not
Power
what
over
we said.
self.
Yeah.
I feel like the most important one on here that comes first would have to be guidance, because before you have wisdom, you have to have guidance from someone or something that knows more than you.
I would agree.
And once you get that information, those experiences, then you have enough wisdom within you to have security, to know like, okay, I know exactly what to do. But then that gives you power, which is also confidence to go out there and execute.
Hey, Rex, let's go through what some of these centers are, because
Okay.
it gets more granularized as we proceed in the chapter. And now I'm on 112, excuse me.
Okay.
And we're starting to look at family-centeredness.
Yes.
How about if I take one and then you take one, and we'll get through them a little bit
Okay.
easier for listening.
Okay.
So with the family-centeredness, the family becomes your center, okay? And we can all say, well, most of us are family-centered. We put our family first in order to be a good member, individual in the family, and then, or second, but an immediate second, and meaning there's not much in between being first and second there. And then, ironically, there are elements out there that destroy that centeredness.
Yeah. Outside sources.
Drugs, alcohol, addictions,
Money.
pornography,
Definitely.
greed,
Yes.
dishonesty, infidelity. If we know what our center is it easier to protect it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is not a futility exercise. Okay, let's go to the next one.
So the next one is money centeredness. And now this is this is very common for a lot of people. A lot of people want to be financially stable, or even more than just financially stable. They want to be rich and wealthy. And oftentimes when you obsess over that tangible piece of paper, that wealth that you think that is going to, it can make more than just the difference that you want in your life. I'm gonna put it like this: is you lose yourself.
Oh,
You lose yourself. You lose family.
do you sell it?
Do you sell it?
Do you sell it to money?
I mean, you sell a part of you for the money.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do that now.
Yes,
You
we
know.
do.
And I asked people, matter of fact, yesterday I said, are you profit driven or purpose driven?
Right. Right.
Because if you're profit driven, you'll do anything for that dollar.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true. Yeah. Okay. He goes on then on page 114 of work-centered.
Yes.
Well, not to be confused with earning money, but
Yeah.
we tend to find our love, find our identity.
It pretty much goes hand in hand.
Well, it does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. And then there's the our coworkers,
Yes.
esteeming to our boss at any cost. Well, now work isn't intended to be at any cost, but if this is your center, then this is what you'll have to admit.
Right.
It's not like, well, I don't want to be that. But you can decide that later.
Right, right.
But for right now, you need to decide, is work the center of who you are, your identity, your relationships? Is everything centered around work?
And I think that's the biggest obstacle for people nowadays is they want to spend time with family,
We do. More
but
so.
they don't want to lose their job
Right.
because the money, helps support the family.
True.
And I told somebody, I said, I have to find a way to incorporate family and work so then I'm not sacrificing valuable time at pouring into my family in the right ways.
Yeah.
So
Sometimes it's when I was in my career, the corporation or job loss would cause me to have to consider something else, and I had to always balance how is this going to impact my family.
exactly.
But yet I'm not being a very good provider to my family if I'm not thinking about my career and the growth of my ability to. And there's a certain reward from work. I mean, you go to lots of parts of the Bible where they talk about the value of work, and it is God's plan that we work and we appreciate the value of our work. What is it in Samuel? I think he talks about that a lot. So with that in mind, we're looking at work-centeredness, and that takes some time to consider.
Yes.
Now, if any of these, I just want to stop for a quick second. If any of these fall into your category, then write that on top of a piece of paper and express to yourself by kind of a checklist all the reasons why you feel that you're work-centered, family-centered, money-centered, and in that way you can understand it more clearly. Don't put down any judgments. Just put down the facts. This is why I feel I'm money-centered.
Yeah. So the next one is possession-centered. We live in a world full of superficial people.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They use these, I don't want to call it that, but it's kind of they create a facade with the things that they have, such as car, clothes, house, jewelry,
Right.
things of that nature, in order to manipulate someone. And I'm not saying manipulate like in a bad way, but to appear more valuable than what they really are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do see that a lot. And I feel like what we need to do as people, we need to ask ourselves, are we really buying the things that we want, or are we investing into the things that we need? Because
So wants and needs become a part of this.
exactly,
You may want it, but you don't need it.
exactly,
You may think you need it, but you don't want it.
right,
Because you need it and you don't want it, you're probably not going to go get it.
right.
So the other is true too, because we seek pleasure. We want it, therefore we convince ourselves that we need it. I need a BMW. Well, boy, you got a Ford out there.
Yeah. see, I remember, when I was superficial,
Yes.
and I could buy anything and everything that I wanted, but God sat me down, and of course I had to humble myself.
Yeah.
But now I have what I need.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a more appreciation for what it is.
Definitely.
That exact scenario happened to me recently, for another time.
Yes.
We looked at pleasure-centeredness, where pleasure becomes a part of, what we're seeking. The mind is actually designed on the left side of the mind. It creates memory in the hippocampus, and then that memory kind of like tells our trigger system that we'll get more dopamine and serotonin release if we receive pleasure. And the frontal cortex of the mind is our executive functioning, where we use judgment, logic, and reasoning. So pleasure, quite often, because of the dopamine reward that we get, will override reason and judgment.
Definitely.
And, but all of those things are in the mind for a purpose.
See, with pleasure centeredness, I had to speak on that topic this morning before I got here.
Okay.
And it started with sex.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes that is really
I agree with
like
you.
the number one.
But God made us that way to procreate. And
But, a self-restraint
yes.
is necessary, because like you don't want to be impulsive and go and do something with somebody that maybe you shouldn't even be doing it with.
Oh, good point. Good point. And that's not fair to them either. And all the other people that are in your life. Because once you do that, you don't want them to know that you did it.
See, I had to hold myself accountable, where I said, look, the message that was being delivered to me and what she wanted, I said, you know what? No, I'm practicing self-discipline, and I have to restrain from getting that, because I said, I am not where I want to be. And basically the principle that I am learning is delayed gratification is more important than instant gratification.
Nice. Good for you.
Yes. So I had to sacrifice that.
Well, this is a nice lead in, because the next one is church-centeredness.
Yes.
And with church-centeredness, you really get down to those things that you believe and value. And we have the Bible to help us, to guide us with that. We
skipped over
deacons. Did we skip over something?
Yes.
Which one did we skip over?
We skipped over friend and enemy centeredness.
Oh, I didn't do that on purpose.
It's all good. It's all good.
Okay, well, go ahead and go into that. We only have a few more minutes left on the clock on the show.
So with friend and enemy centeredness, you cannot allow a person to control you based on the anger that you have within. And a lot of people, I'm going to say, people that I've known have allowed this to happen. They feel uncomfortable, going into a setting because they know somebody else is going to be there.
Right. Or
they're so triggered by somebody, they're willing to go risk their freedom to do something dumb.
Right.
Yeah. So
in friendships, I think the word vulnerability comes in. Empathy, and there's so many like nurturing words that are involved in friendship, and the other is true too.
Yeah.
There's the other side of that. So the question then becomes, in your centeredness, what part of friendship and enemy are you living in? Mm-hmm. And are you your own best friend, or are you your worst enemy?
Well, oftentimes, I'm going to put it like this, is I pray to the Most High. I say, protect me from myself before you protect me from someone else, because sometimes I could be my own enemy. Sometimes I could potentially hurt myself or put myself in a weird situation, and it's not even their fault. It was my fault because I allowed it.
Stand up for yourself, and I'll back you up, 'cause problems don't solve themselves. I'll tell you what, instead of would or could, I think you should draw a line in the sand and stand your ground. It's for your own good.